Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us here at the Dwellynn Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes, and I'm super excited to have Joseph with us today. Thank you so much for being on the show, first and foremost, Joseph.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So Joseph is a multifamily investment specialist, is basically leading a group acquisition of over 30 million in real estate and providing asset management. They have about 505 units under management and growing. Interesting background. He was a former lieutenant in the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, for over 17 years. And he's got 12 of which he's been working, for a publicly traded company as well. So I think, Joseph, I think you can do a way better job than I can. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Israel up until I was 29 when I moved to the United States. Like you said, I was a lieutenant in the IDF, and then I started working. I went to school for software engineering, and then I started working in the software industry up until 2017, give or take. I was still fully employed. Back in 2005, this is where I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I got the real estate bug, and we started investing back home. And then in 2007, we moved to the United States. We kind of realized, both me and my wife, that it's probably the best market in our lifetime. So we sold the one property we had back home and brought the money over here and started investing over here, and the rest is history.
Wow, what a fascinating story. I love the fact that, you mentioned reading that book, right? I mean, I get people reach out to me all the time and say, "Oh, how do I get started? Where do I, I want to get into the business." But I think that book basically tells you what you've been trying to tell yourself about your life in a very weird way, right? Like, I'm in a 9 to 5. Can I keep doing this for the rest of my life, or is there something else? And the book just opens up your mind, right? So, but for you guys actually moved to a different country. In my mind, I'm thinking that's a huge sacrifice, right? How was that, experience like for you and your wife, Rita, and how did she, accept that decision from you?
Well, we both think long term, right? And we both realize that moving to the States is going to provide us and our family better opportunities. And what I love about the States is that with all the noise the media generates, right, it doesn't really matter who you are, where you're from, what's your background. If you work hard and you're willing to sacrifice, you will be rewarded. The opportunities are out here. So that's really where I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to come over here and really get my family the lifestyle that I would never be able to afford anywhere else in the world.
Oh, that's such a great question. I've been to Israel. I was in Tel Aviv a few months ago. Beautiful country. So I can imagine you saying what you just said. So you guys came to the US and then you jumped right in. I think you started with a duplex, right? And now you've kind of grown that. So can you just tell us a little bit about that first deal and kind of your path to growing that?
Yeah, so first thing we did was educate ourselves, right? Everywhere in the world that you have real estate is going to be different taxes, different rules, different structures, different finances. And the first thing we did was educate ourselves. Both me and my wife got licensed back in 08, 09 as brokers, and got to know the system. And then back in 08, we made our first purchase, that duplex. It was a foreclosure. There were a lot of those out there in 08, 09. And we had to put some money to renovate it, but it's been a wonderful property for us ever since. Up until about 2015, it was really nice cash flowing. And then we bought a few more properties since then. The thing, though, with single family, and that's what caused me to, if you want to call it, graduate to multifamily, is in 2015, that duplex cost me about $45,000 over a period of about 6 months. Yeah, I know. So um, um, we had foundation, and when you raise a 1970s 1970s property, all the cast iron plumbing underneath it, everything that was holding it into place was the soil. Once you raise the house, it all just crumbles. So we had to do replumbing for the entire house, both sides of that duplex. We had a hailstorm the same year, which was insured, but you still have deductibles. We had a water heater burst, which took out the flooring. We had a garage door go out. We just had a series of um, uh, unfortunate run of events that made me pull so much money out of my own pocket that I said, well, wait a second. I have another property that needs a fence. That's about $8,000. I have another property that needs AC. That's about $3,500, right? That's not scalable. What happens if I have 10 of those or 20 of those and they all need something? So that's where my engineering background kind of kicked in, and I started doing research and figuring out what's the next kind of asset class to invest in. And multifamily was the answer.
Wow. So I definitely want to touch on that because you went through some sort of adversity. And then when that is happening in real life, you feel as if, why is this happening to me? Why me? You know, sometimes you can feel like it's very overwhelming, and you can't even take it. And I know this, you know, I've just finished a couple of flips, so I can understand where you were coming from. After all that, how were you still able to not only research to, you know, like you said, graduate into larger multifamily, but how did you keep going? You know, in that really hard moment, you had all these things going on happening at the same time. From a mindset perspective, how did you keep going, and how did you think real estate was still the key to your financial freedom?
Well, it's to be honest, I have a mindset of paranoid, right? So I want to be prepared for whatever is coming. So I was actually ready for that set of events. A lot of people, when they buy single family homes, they don't create a capex budget, some kind of a reserve that you put money every month in a place, and you have the discipline not to touch it, knowing that, because here's the thing, doesn't matter even if you buy a brand new out of the box, the builder just put the last touch on it, AC can still go out. AC will go out in the next 5 to 7 years. That's what the statistics say, right? Water heaters go out, roof gets damaged, tenants destroy the floors. There's always something going on. And when it's a single family home, it's all you, it's all your pocket. You spend that money out of your own pocket in order to make it work. So if you don't build that reserve fund, you're going to have to pull that money out of your pocket, right? And I don't know a lot of people that can pull $50,000 in on a heartbeat, right? Just write checks. So if I didn't build that little fund, right, that reserves account, then I wouldn't be able to handle that. So I was ready for that, but I also realized that it's not scalable. That thing wiped away about 5 years worth of cash flow from the property. So, you know, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, and then wiped out. So what's the point, right? Where's the promise from Monopoly, right? That I'll have cash flow and then I'll buy something else with it, right? So that's really where I knew there's nothing out there that prepares people for that. And I don't know if you saw, but I have a book that I wrote, and it's on Amazon. It's called The Real Estate College Fund. And it's really designed to help people understand that there's alternative to save money than to drop it into an account that goes to the market and you know, roll the dice about what happens to the market. But in that book, I try to make sure that I list all those risks that come with investing in single family homes and ways to mitigate those risks, right? One way to mitigate the risk of capital reserves is creating a capital reserves account, right? And that's the thing that I don't think there's other books out there. All the other real estate books that I saw describe everything as happy and everything goes well. Rich Dad Poor Dad, for example, that's not a real estate book. That's a mindset book, right? It's more of get out of the small worker ant mindset and take a look at the big picture. Real estate is just one of the vehicles that you can leverage to get out of the rat race, right? Probably one of the best assets that you can leverage to get out of the rat race. But it's not a book that tells you how to buy and what to look for, right? It's not a book that will tell you, hey, go drive that property after hours and see what happens to the neighborhood when everybody gets back from work, right? Does everybody get drunk and make noise outside? Is there any violent activity happening after hours, right? That's the kind of things that I try to list in my book and help people understand how to mitigate those risks.
And so you did mitigate that risk, and you were able to, coalesce your funds and, bring back this property. Do you still own that duplex, or did you get rid of it?
I still own it. I bought it in 2009, so there's nothing I can do right now to financially justify selling it.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah,
Ever since then, I refied it. I took more than all of my money out, and it still cash flows.
Wow.
So why would I sell it?
Makes sense. Okay. So you had the duplex, and then you did some research, like you said, you made up your mind, and you graduated, right? So you bought a 22 unit, right? Was that the next deal?
Well, I bought a few singles along the way between the duplex and the 22 units in 2016. But yeah, the 22 unit was my first multifamily.
Okay.
And I used the money that I refied the single units in order to put the down payment on the 22 unit.
Okay. So interestingly, right, you kind of did the duplex, then went into single family, and then went back into a bigger unit. We have similar sort of pattern. I have a duplex. I did some flips. I know never ever to touch single families ever again. So, it's very interesting. What was that like for you, the single family phase, and what did you learn from it?
Well, for me, a duplex and a triplex and even a fourplex is still single family, right? It's the residential world. You get into the commercial environment on the 5+, right? When you start dealing with commercial loans, and the risks of single families are the same risk, whether it's a duplex or a triplex or one bedroom, because when you have a vacancy on a single family, then you have 100% vacancy. The person that's going to have to pay for the mortgage is you. The person that's going to pay for the insurance, for the electric bill, for the residential agent to lease it up for you, it's all going to land on you. So that's really where I didn't like that risk. When we have a 100-unit property, I can have 10 of it vacant. I still get enough money to pay the mortgage. I still get enough money to pay the salaries. I still get enough money to keep it properly maintained and pay my investors. So that's really where you get to spread the risk across 100 units versus one out of one.
So one of the major challenges for people is raising funds, right? You speak to people and they want to get started in multifamily or larger assets, but it's just really getting that critical mass of capital together to go out there and take down these bigger assets. Well, at least even from a 20+ is considered bigger for them. And for most people that want to get started, right? Mm-hmm. How did you overcome that challenge? And I know you said you refinanced some of the money from your single families and that helped you, but then you went on to syndicating. But how did, just moving from a single family mindset into a bigger unit, how was that like for you? How did you really get to that level? Because that's where a lot of people get stuck and kind of think, what do I need to do to get to that next phase?
Yeah, so you start with educating yourself, right? I'm a big believer in educating yourself before you. You won't see me do fire ready aim, right? It took me a while to research the market and understand what asset class I want to get into and what does it mean and what's the ins and outs of that asset class. And then when I started, when I realized multifamily is what I want to do, then I was able to pull the trigger a lot faster. Now, I did have some money for my refis, but it wasn't enough for me to take down my first 22 unit. So I had to be creative, and I had a chance to talk to quite a few owners along the way, and some of them just had properties that didn't work out. But eventually I found an owner that had a good property at a reasonable price, and I was able to strike a deal with him that he will let me do owner financing. So I was able to come in with less down payment and work out some kind of a structure with him, and until I was able to refinance him out. So I had to get creative. So I got creative, right? When I got to the syndication part of things, right? Now you have to realize that this is a much larger scale, and now you cannot do it on your own. And when you do, then now you start talking to other people, and it goes anywhere from friends and family and colleagues and past colleagues and people that you know, and you gotta convince them that not only you know what you're doing and that you will protect their money as if it was your own. And it's the same thing, because I am the bigger investor myself in this transaction, right? Then you also have to convince them that multifamily is the right asset class to invest in. And you also have to talk to them and help them, and again, educate them about what is multifamily, what the value, what's the benefits, why multifamily, right? And why now, and all these kind of questions that they will ask you, because you're asking people to write a $50,000 check, $100,000 check, and it's not, you know, yeah, you know, give me $5,000.
Right, right, right. Okay. So I really like the way you kind of moved up, right? You did a 22 unit and then you went to a 130 and then you kind of just kept on going. So of all those apartments that you have, can you just tell us one of a really good one that you liked? Like it could just be a case study. How did you find it? You know, how did you fund it? And, you know, you already mentioned syndication, but you can elaborate a little bit. And do you guys manage these assets on your own?
So in the last one, we don't self-manage. We use a third-party management company. Um, it's just that there's two factors in it. One, if you want to take agency debt, right, the big loans, they want to make sure that somebody that has a lot of experience is running these things. So if you're new and you don't have a lot of experience managing multifamily, they won't let you do self-management. They just won't give you the loan. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is where is my focus? What am I looking for? Because property management is a whole different business, and it's a very time-consuming business. And that's just not what I wanted to do. So that's why these two reasons is why we chose to go with the third-party property managers. The first one that I did, the 22 unit, would be a good case study, because it's really the beginning, right? It's a kind of struggle that a lot of people will have. And like I said, I started talking to brokers and other real estate agents and all these things, and nobody would give me the daytime. Right? And everybody that will try to come into this industry in a hot market is going to face the same challenges. Brokers will not return their calls. Brokers will not answer emails. And it comes out of the fact that there is a lot of demand and not a lot of supply. So when you finally have a supply, and this is a sneak peek from behind the scenes as a broker, when you have a listing, you want to make sure that the people that get a shot at it are the people you have relationships, that you know, that are closers, that have the experience. And there's enough of those that you don't have to take a quote unquote risk with a person that has never started and have never done anything, because just reality, first-time buyer is much, much more likely to drop out of the deal than somebody that owns 3,000 units, right? Just because he will not have the confidence, he will not be able to secure the financing, he will not be he won't have enough experience to know that certain things that come up in due diligence are just standard. So that's really where most broker would prefer to work with just experienced buyers and not any first time. So I kept banging my head against the wall with that and didn't get anything solid and anything worth my time. So I said, you know what, the hell with it. I'm just going to go source it myself. So I sent yellow letters and postcards and did cold calling and did whatever I had to do and searched owners' names on the tax records, on the county website. I did whatever I have to do in order to find those opportunities out there. And then that guy that I mentioned earlier that I bought the 22 unit from, he called me back from a postcard. And he was just ready. He was 80 years old, built the property himself. He was a custom home builder for decades. So really, I had an opportunity. I went out there. I saw the property. I met with the guy, sat down with him for a few meetings just to build rapport, build a relationship there, right? And he's World War II generation, right? That kind of stand-up guys that if he would have just wrote that contract on a napkin, I would feel safe, right? A handshake from this guy means this thing is going to happen, and you don't have to worry about that. So, and yeah, no, before you ask, he doesn't have any other properties. I wish I would have bought everything he had. And really, once we got to know each other and once we got to build that relationship, I told him, look, I don't have that much to put in down payment because I want to keep some money for operational, right? To make sure that if I have a water leak tomorrow, and this is my lesson learned, right? If I have something going on tomorrow, then I have enough funds to recover and take care of it. So he was understanding, and I guess that rapport that we built, that relationship that we built was strong enough that I said, you know what, let's do this. You give me less money to come in, but I want you to put $5,000 every quarter towards principal to reduce the principal until we get to the 25% down. And that worked for me, right? That worked well because I still had a full-time job back then. I didn't need the money coming out of the property for living expenses. So I was okay with putting it right back into the loan. So that was a win-win for everybody because he got to make more money by doing owner financing. I got to get into a property like this at a lower down payment. He got to step off because he was still going up there to fix locks and take care of things. And it's kind of like, okay, we got this. Mm-hmm. So it was just a good combination and a good transaction for everybody involved.
So what was the purchase price?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what was the purchase price?
Oh, the purchase price was 1.6, and it's a 2007 build. It's a really nice property, granite countertop, really an amazing property. And when we refinanced him about a year later, we got to refinance it at a 2.1 valuation.
Wow. Just in a year, that's a fantastic.
And all we had to do is really management, very light CapEx. We did some improvements that we needed to do, but most of it was management. It was getting the right processes in place. It's not using a realtor to lease it up. It's not using retail AC technician and retail plumbers and retail everything, which you know how these guys are, right? It's kind of like, good morning, $100. Now let's go see what happens.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that's really where we were able to bring the value up. And that's really one of the things I love most about multifamily is you can force appreciation. Every dollar you increase in income or every dollar you decrease in expenses equally, both of those equally increase the value of your property. And Absolutely. You have a multiplier right? Based on the number of units you have. So
Absolutely.
there's
Great job.
nothing that can beat that.
Yeah, congratulations on that one. That's a good one. So now, you've you got your feet wet, you're into this 22 unit. I was also reading that your goal is to kind of get to like 1,500 units. And is that mainly just by, what you've described, get a good asset under good management, source your own deals, or have you kind of changed your strategies a little bit now that you actually got into the multifamily space?
Yeah, so in this market, we can't really just trust our own sourcing. I have to build relationship with other brokers and other agents, and I tell them, for them, I'll be a buyer. Just because I'm a broker and I'm doing what you're doing, right? If you get me a good deal, I'm your buyer. I don't need commissions. I don't need a split, right? I'm going to work with you as a buyer, and that helped me a lot find other deals. I used connections like my property management company to see if I can find opportunities through them. I went on multiple podcasts. I'm on the internet. I'm on Facebook. I'm on a lot of other investment groups. It's really, in this market, to source deals, you really have to do whatever you can in order to find those off-market opportunities. Because if you get an email with a property from Marcus and Millichap or CBRE or any one of the big ones, it's already too late. But there's nothing to be surprised about, right? It's the math of big numbers. They send this email to 200, 300, 500,000 people. In those 300,000 people, there will be at least 100 that have a different strategy than yours. And you can't control what their strategy is. So you can control what their investors are looking for. I met a guy that has foreign investors from Germany, and these guys are happy when they get 5% return. And it's like, introduce me to some of them, because my investors are not going to even look at that. Right? So because he's got investors that are willing to take a lot less than my investors, he can afford to pay more. The deal still makes sense to him at places where it stops making sense to me. So that's why I'm saying the law of big numbers is, the more people look at it, the higher the chances that you'll find someone that has a different strategy than yours.
Wow, that is so interesting. Yeah, I talk about that as well all the time. When you get all these deals on LoopNet, it's already too late. I wish we can just keep going, Joseph, but we definitely dwell into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
Yes.
All right. First question. What makes you, Joseph, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
It's twofold, really. The first one is what I mentioned earlier. I got a paranoid state of mind, which means I will run through every possible permutation of how this thing could go wrong. And I will build plan B, plan C, plan D, plan E, all the way down, right? Just to make sure I'm covering all those angles. In that process, when I run through all the different permutations, I also find the best permutations and the best way to structure this deal. So one of my greatest powers is I'm able to find really creative ways to structure deals. And that's really where I really have an advantage a lot across a lot of other people. And then my other advantage is, my other uniqueness is that I am relentless. There is no off switch.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, those are really good. Next question. What was the last book that you read, and what was the one thing that you picked out from that book?
I actually just finished reading a book called Rejection Proof. And it's about this guy that goes through a transformation of being afraid of rejection and going through 100 days of rejections. He's an Austin guy, has a blog as well. And he's got really interesting insights about rejections. And the one big thing from his insights is, rejections is a lot more about the person rejecting than about the person that is getting rejected. And it's very true, right? When you put things in perspective, right? I can give you examples, but it's a very profound realization.
Yeah, especially in this business. I mean, I'm calling owners as well all day, and you get to, yeah, I'm never selling my property. I'm never selling my property. You get that every day. You have to build that almost resistance to that. No, 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 and just keep looking for your yes. So I can totally relate.
Yeah, but it's got nothing to do with you, right? If that person is not in a place where they're ready to sell, it doesn't matter who calls them and what you say when you call them, or if you're wearing a suit or not, or if you're using a $10 phone or a $1,000 iPhone. Nothing is.
Right. Okay. Last question. Last question. So you've got all your assets under management. You've got your broker side of the business. You've got a ton of stuff. You obviously got your family. What do you do for fun?
This is what I do for fun, right? Talking about real estate, working in real estate, spending time with my family. This is what I do for fun.
I like that. I like that. So if there's somebody listening to us and maybe they're out in Texas or they're just, somewhere in the country and they just, love, what you've been talking about and really want to get connected with you, where is the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, so our website will have all my contact information. It's ebgtx.com, 5 letters, and it stands for Eureka Business Group, Texas. And I'm also very easy to find on just Google my name. You'll find me on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and every other social media possible. Just reach out to me. It's very easy to find me.
Thank you so much, Joseph. I really had a great insight talking to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.